The best part is you grab a gear down, send it off into space, baby. 600 cc's, dude. Rev the pits out of them, dude. Rev the nuts, the pits, the pants, everything. The thing about this bike that's a bit of a secret sauce that it has is the extra 36 cc's of displacement. That makes this thing a lot more usable around town than your traditional 600cc sport bikes. I mean, it feels strong, man. It feels like a strong, strong engine. I can't wait to get this thing on track, man. All right, folks, here it is. First ride and review today on this 2016 Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R, the infamous 636. This is a very cool motorcycle. I have a very big soft spot for these motorcycles, as many of you know, although some of you seem to think I hate Kawasaki's, which is a weird thing. Guys, I hate BMWs. That's what you need to remember. No BMW, Kawasaki good. In case you missed yesterday's big announcement, this is our new intermediate bike giveaway motorcycle. We are super stoked on this thing. It is a pristine example of a 2016 Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R. This is exactly the sort of bike that I think many of you in the audience would purchase as a second motorcycle, stepping up from your beginner bike into the world of big power, sport bikes, track bikes, those sorts of things. So hit the link down below, go to the merch page or the shop page, and use the code Kawasaki to get yourself 3x entries on your dollar. But if you purchase a helmet on shop.yamanube.co, you can get yourself max entries for the month to win this motorcycle, which is pretty sweet. We got tons of cool helmets on there. Definitely go and check that out. We've been putting a lot of effort into the store, trying to give you guys back some value as you sit here and watch Yami Noob. Before we take off with this machine, let's cover real quick specifications. So it's a 636cc inline 4-cylinder engine producing 131 horsepower at like 13,500 RPM or 14,000. All the way up in the rev band. So this is your classic super sport styled motorcycle. It revs super sky high. The ergonomics are uncompromising. It's got a big beefy frame to it, twin spar, aluminum, proper motorcycle frame here. You're not working with some steel trellis, tubular thing. This is a, honest to God, super sport motorcycle. The cool thing about this one is that in 2016, Kawasaki revitalized and updated the ZX6 a little bit. So this motorcycle actually features 3 levels of traction control, a low power and a high power mode, generous Nissan master cylinder here, as you guys can see, pinching a 321mm rotor. That's Nissan's monoblock caliper down here, radially mounted, as you can see. So these are really proper brakes on this motorcycle, which is great. Got the Showa big piston forks, as they call it. Rebound and compression operated on one leg here, and then you got preload on the other leg here. That's a pretty common setup. The rear shock is also fully adjustable. It's a very low setup, and the linkage is down below as well. That's a pretty common setup you see on Japanese 600s. Most 600 super sports are kind of like this. And yeah, this is just classic good sport bike stuff. I'm very excited to ride it today and show you guys what it's all about. Let's start it up and let's hear it, shall we? Stock exhaust on this bad boy, so don't expect anything world-ending. Put it here in neutral. Starts right up, which is really nice. You love to see that. Revs way high. We're definitely going to get a pipe on this thing. I'm noticing there's a servo here for a little butterfly valve to open and close the exhaust. Hopefully that works. We'll see. So yeah, let's ride this bike. Let's talk about it a little bit, shall we? Pulling off here with the ZX6. First thing I gotta say, just real quick about the electronics package on this thing, is more motorcycles need to have an electronics package like this motorcycle. It's 2 buttons. 1 button says power, you get low power or full power, and you got 3 levels of TC. That's exactly what you need. There's probably some way to fully turn it off. I do wish I figured that out, but I have not figured that out yet on this motorcycle. So I don't know how to fully turn off TC. Definitely going to learn how to turn it off. Taking off with the ZX6 here, if you've never ridden a proper 4-cylinder sport bike like this one right here, the first thing you might be shocked at is just how kind of docile the power is down low. Especially if you've ridden something like a big V-twin motorcycle or something like that, there really is not a huge hit of torque on this machine. It's very smooth. The throttle response is not exactly perfect. It is a little bit herky-jerky, I will say. This motorcycle features a ride-by-wire system, so not a cable-actuated throttle here. And maybe this was like early tech for Kawasaki, but I've always found that Kawis just have a bit more engine braking than they need to have. I rode a ZX10 around Jerez back in 2019, and I'm a considerably better rider now than I was back then, but I noticed it just has this tendency to really lurch forward when you get off the gas. But the best part is, you grab a gear down, send it off into space, baby! 600 cc's, dude! Rev the pits out of them, dude! Rev the nuts, the pits, the pants, everything! So people buy these 600cc bikes primarily to rev them out a bunch, you know? Like, that's really the main bag when it comes to a super sport styled bike like this. And I still firmly think that this is massive overkill for the street, especially for the type of riding that is usually defined by the street, right? Which is kind of twisty roads, you want good torque. This is basically the opposite. It's really hunched over, sky-high RPM limit, and you got to really search for the power a little bit on it. But the thing about this bike that's a bit of a secret sauce that it has is the extra 36 cc's of displacement. That makes this thing a lot more usable around town than your traditional 600cc sport bikes. Something like an R6 or something like that, you know? This thing, it's got a good amount of punch in the middle. It's usable. Really nice and usable. That's the thing I come back to it. It's a usable sport bike. Now, you got to decide for yourself if you want to commit to this lifestyle, because that's the thing we tell people here on the channel. You know, it's one thing to ride a ZX6 around and know and understand that it's a really uncomfortable bike and you're making compromises and you're a track day bro, hopefully, and you want this experience. That's the one thing. It's another thing to kind of lie to yourself and be like, no, this is really comfortable. It's exactly the kind of riding I want to do. Because most people would be better served by being on a Z900 or something like that. You get the same 4-cylinder experience, but on something substantially more comfortable. As I enter this braking zone here for this corner, a really great thing about this bike is, of course, the slipper clutch. As you bang down gears on this motorcycle, you know, the slipper clutch is going to help you out a bunch to make sure that the power is managed to the rear wheel, nice and smooth and controlled. You know, that's going to be a great thing that's going to help you out as you're learning to operate this motorcycle as an intermediate level rider. Because this is going to be a big difference if you're coming from something like an R3 or a Ninja 400, you're stepping up to the plate to the 600 category. You're probably going to be pretty gobsmacked at how fast and how committed these bikes are. I certainly was. I went from an R3 to a Daytona 675. That was a big old jump, let me tell you. That was a big jump many, many years ago. But hey, I'm here, right? So I guess I did it. Let's get a quick little pull in here. Get first gear going on the old ZX6. Yeah, those 131 horsepower. I mean, it feels strong, man. It feels like a strong, strong engine. I can't wait to get this thing on track, man. This bike, unfortunately, because it was lightly used and bought from a dealership, they put on some pretty cheapo OEM style rubber on this thing. So we're dealing with like a Michelin 2CT or something like that. It's straight up just hard ass OEM rubber. I am definitely going to put on some Q4s or some Super Courses on this ZX6 and give it the life it deserves. There's also a bit of a strange vibration coming from the front wheel whenever I get it up to speed on the highway, and I'll definitely show you guys that whenever we get out there. Clicking it up into 4th gear on these light and easy twisties here. This bike's got a good amount of revs and torque to play with, you know, so I'm like right in the middle of the rev band. All that power is going to be all the way at the tippy top, which makes it pretty hard to access for the everyday street ride. Even if you grab down a gear, you got to search for the power a little bit. And it always feels like you're just Here's the thing. When I ride 600s on the street, it feels like I'm constantly pitting out on a cold lap, right? It feels like I'm just about to just put my hand up and put my leg out, stay off the line of where I'm trying to go on the track, and I'm just gonna pit out. That's how it always feels to me, because you're in such a committed position. Which, let's talk about that a little bit. So seat height on this thing is 32.7 inches, which is pretty high for a lot of people. And the pegs and the handlebars, pretty committed, pretty dang committed, about as committed as I would like it on a motorcycle. It's a super sport. There's really no getting around the fact that you're way hunched over and it's designed to stay in the pocket like this, right? So the ergos are pretty dang punishing, I'm not gonna lie. As you guys have probably noticed by now, this particular model, this 2016, does not come equipped with a quick shifter. So no quick shifter on this motorcycle. No auto blip as well either, right? Because you need one to have the other. You don't need to have one to have the other, but it wouldn't make sense to have a no up quick shift but auto blip. I've never seen that before. I believe that was a factory option back in 2016 when this bike was offered, but that was at a time when not every 600cc bike came with quick shifters as standard. I remember the Daytona, the 675R, like the one that I have, came factory with a quick shifter, but the normal one didn't have a quick shifter, which it's a big bummer riding these bikes and not having a quick shift. You definitely want the quick shift on these bikes, and preferably an auto blip as well. Something like the RS660 system, right, where you have up and down quick shift. It just makes the experience better. I just really like having at least a quick shift up. You don't have to have an auto blip down, but having at least a quick shift up is definitely a great thing. Talk about braking feel. These brakes, as I mentioned, Nissan monoblock calipers, pinching a 310mm rotor with a pretty generous master cylinder here, adjustable lever as well from factory. And this bike needs to have its fluids refreshed a little bit, but it does do the job pretty well. You can see a stamp here on the brakes. Come to a pretty good stop on this motorcycle. Let's see what it's like going up the hill, 4th gear, 4,000 RPMs. I mean, it's got torque. You can't say it has no torque or it's gutless. It's pretty different from an R6 or something like that. It's pretty dang different. And the sound is just awesome. Even with the stock exhaust, you gotta love screaming 4-cylinder sound. That's just classic motorcycling. Let's see how it handles these little speed bumps here. Take this bump. Yeah, I mean, it's decent. It's obviously a pretty stiff suspension setup. The springs are obviously pretty powerful on these forks and the shock. It's you know, even if you make them adjustable, obviously you can, but it's never going to be a comfortable, beautiful kind of, you know, cozy ride on the street. It's basically a race bike with headlights. That's what it's designed to be. Our last speed bump here. Ugh, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it's one of those things where you gotta really just co-sign the 600 life. If you're gonna get into this ride, if you're gonna get into these kind of motorcycles, you gotta know what you're getting into, man. You gotta understand that doing a 200-mile ride on a ZX6 is probably a little bit punishing, you know, if you got back issues, if you're not super spry and young. I mean, I did it back when I was 22. I rode my Daytona from Dallas to Austin and did a huge ride down here. That was about like 7 or 8 hours in the saddle of a Daytona 675R. I wouldn't do that nowadays, I'll tell you that, but back then I did it and it was fine. So, you know, it's the type of thing where we tell people that if you're spry and you're young, you can definitely get into it, but, you know, it's definitely not for everybody. I think if you're over the age of 25 or 30 or so, I don't really see why you'd want to daily this motorcycle. As a weekend toy, as a track toy, oh yeah, absolutely. That's pretty sweet, you know? All right, let's give it a quick blast over the bridge, shall we? Yeah, I definitely feel that imbalance in the front end. I think the wheel wasn't properly balanced when they put these tires on, because I'm getting a big shake out of the front end once I get up to about 95 or 100 miles an hour. That's not ideal. I don't love that. something we definitely have to look into with this bike, because I'm going to be going more than 100 miles per hour on track, I'll tell you that, and I'm not trying to catch a tank slapper and die on the ZX6. On the highway here now with the ZX6, given that I've got a little bit of wind protection here and full fairings and I can kind of tuck in a little bit, you know, it's a pretty comfortable place to sit on the highway. I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable. I think a naked bike is definitely worse. If you're looking at stuff like that, I would say a naked bike is definitely not going to fit the bill if you're doing a lot of highway commuting, a lot of highway miles. And the thing is, it's pretty exhilarating, you know, when it kind of gets up to speed and gets up in the revs. I mean, I love that, but again, I just want to get it on track. I think riding around on the street, you know, you get a hit of that drug, and enough times, eventually you want harder drugs, you know? Which is why I guess a lot of guys jump from this bike to a ZX10. Makes sense, you gotta get all the Kyle energy out there, you know? The one thing I will say is kind of peculiar is this bike, despite having 3 levels of TC and 2 power modes, doesn't have a fuel gauge. It just has a fuel light, which really stinks. That's not that much fun, having just a fuel light instead of a proper gauge, you know? So yeah, I think overall the ZX6 is a pretty well-sorted package. You know, you gotta lean into the super sport lifestyle, but once you do, it's got better torque than an R6 or a CBR 600. It's going to provide you a world-class track experience, in my opinion, and with a couple mods that we'll definitely show you guys and maybe even do on the bike ourselves, you can get this to be a super competent track day machine. Like really competent track day bike that you can grow with and learn with and just really advance your skills with if you're not wanting to go the Ninja 400 SV650 route, which you probably should. But if you're vain and you want a 600, I mean, I got a 600 as a track bike, which, you know, whatever, you can definitely learn with them. These are really well understood platforms. You can get these to perform extremely well for you. And as a street bike, you know, is it the greatest thing since sliced bread? No, of course not. I'd rather be on a Z900. I'd rather be upright a little bit, maybe a little bit more comfortable. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty good for what it is. I mean, you can't go wrong with a Kawi, dude. These bikes are really well sorted and really well understood, and Kawi's been making them for years and years. They've refined the formula very nicely. This is a really well sorted motorcycle. And we're super stoked to be giving it away. So I think that's going to wrap up my thoughts with it for today. I'd rate it a pretty solid 8.5 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10 motorcycle. Pretty awesome. I like it a lot. And if you want to win it, be sure to head over to merch.yamanube.co or shop.yamanube.co. Get yourself entered to win this thing. Use the code Kawasaki for 3x entries, or buy yourself a helmet and max out your entries for the month. We will catch you guys in the next one. See you later.
Keep watching Yamanube.